On this. Every year we do our indoor air quality walkthroughs in December and January timeframe where we're, checking out the spaces, looking at anything such as carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, humidity, temperature. We're taking readings in every single classroom and open space to ensure that we're in the parameters of what MDH wants us to and MDE want us to be in. And we usually are always bringing in a lot of fresh air, especially during COVID. So our CO2 levels are pretty low, which is great because CO2 levels are comparable to lower test scores if it's a high CO2, and then higher test scores if it's lower CO2. That's what they've been finding. So, and then we also do look for any moisture concerns as well when we're doing these walkthroughs. And we also do a staff survey that's sent out to all staff, so they can present us with any single concerns that you have in a workspace. So when our technicians are out there, they have a map that shows any concerned areas that were identified in that staff survey, just to provide an additional second look at certain things to help a teacher out if they have any concerns. If they think it's mold, but really it's just dried water stain on a ceiling tile that just needs to be replaced. A lot different than what mold would actually be. So confined space awareness. We got to discuss this. We do have confined spaces throughout all district buildings. So the thing is just to not enter any of these spaces that are permit required, which we'll discuss more. So a confined space is identified as a limited means of entry and exit. It's not designed for continuous occupancy, and it's large enough to bodily enter and work. So that could be like a boiler, if you go into a boiler, it's not meant for continuous occupancy. It has limited means for entry and exit, and it's large enough to bodily enter and do work. So that's confined space, but is it permit required or is it non-permit required? Non-permit required contains no hazard that poses a threat to employees. So if you vent out that boiler and it's fresh air going in, and if we need to test it with the four-gas meter to ensure that, we can do that as well. But there shouldn't be a hazard in there. If it's cooled down, it's not gonna be hot. There shouldn't be any sort of exposed hazard in there. We could have it tested if we need to. But it could be another thing. It could be a tunnel. Tunnels are considered confined spaces as well because there's limited means for entry and exit, large enough to bodily enter. And it's not designed for continuous occupancy. It could be a very small space, so we need to make sure that there's no hazard in there, such as water that could enter there and engulf the space or whatnot. But there are all permit required spaces. Those could be spaces that do have hazardous atmospheres, such as a storm sewer. If you go down to a storm sewer, guess what comes in there? Water from a rainfall. The last thing you want to do is be in a storm sewer with rainfall coming in, and keep getting higher and higher. And now there's a potential for drowning. Or going into a hot space where it's hot atmosphere, you can fall ill to heat stress pretty quickly if you're in a confined area with no airflow. Could be, if you're in a grain bin, if you fall off the staircase in a grain bin and now you're engulfed with all that, or any other serious safety hazard as well. So there's non-permit and permit required. District employees do not enter permit required spaces, only non-permit required spaces. If there's ever any concern with the space, we can always come out and have it tested to ensure that it's safe for occupancy for staff. We do have a written program that does state all of our confined spaces. We will be updating this with our new inventory come next month. Examples for spaces could be boilers, tunnels, crawl spaces, pipe chases, water tanks, boiler stacks, and storm sewers. It all depends on if the opening is big enough for a person to get in there. That's the important thing. Affected people is everyone in this building. Everyone has the ability to be next to a confined space, so we all need to be made aware of what they are and what not to do. We don't enter these spaces if they have a permit required label on them. Authorized employees are going to be contractors and fire department that have the ability to enter a permit required space and do rescue or do work in the space. They have the air monitoring capabilities of testing the space, as well as the rescue abilities in case someone falls ill in there. We don't have those abilities. We don't have the equipment to rescue someone that does fall ill in a confined space. So we do not enter permit required spaces. We'll be talking about lockout takeout awareness. There are building leads, mechanics, and maintenance that are authorized. Authorized employees have the ability to put on a lock and tag and lock out a machine to do maintenance on it. Everyone else needs to be made aware of what lock and tag out is and what not to do if they do see a lock and tag. So lockout tagout is the procedure for de-energizing the space, providing a lock and tag on there so no one can turn it back on while there's maintenance being done to the machine. Could be electrical, mechanical, could be pneumatic, could be gravitational, such as like a garage door. Garage door is going to have electrical, but it's also going to have gravitational because that garage door needs to be wedged somehow to prevent it from falling down on someone. It's one of the most common OSHA violations, one of the highest hazards for OSHA because, coming in contact with electricity, that's going to be a serious hazard, and OSHA takes that very seriously. Like I said, everyone in here that's not authorized is affected. You need to be made aware of what lock and tag out looks like. We do have a lock and a tag on a machine, preventing people from starting it back up. Do not cut that. If you have any questions, look on the tag. The tag will have a person's name and date on there for when it was locked out. Talk to that person if you have any additional questions. So training is required annually for authorized and affected employees. That's why we're here today, getting this brief PowerPoint. All the authorized employees have a periodic inspection that we do a walkthrough of a procedure to ensure that they know how to properly read the procedure to lock it out properly. Notify contractors that we do have lockout tagout procedures in place, so they're using that properly as well. The last thing we want to do is have a contractor on site doing maintenance on an open electrical panel with it not being locked out and having us be exposed to that if we're walking by and something goes wrong. So always be cautious of that. And we will be updating our procedures in July as well with that assessment. So we do have some employees that are on the respiratory protection program. That could be because they're doing any sort of boiler cleanouts, or maybe because they're exposed to abundance of dust. So we do have that, or there could be chlorine gas at the middle school for the swimming pool. So we do have a program with that does have their annual medical evaluations. We do our annual fit testing on the respirators, and we do our annual training as well. If you ever have any questions on a respirator or need additional parts or new cartridges, reach out to myself or Dan. It's important that we do have the proper cartridge for what you're being exposed to. So some potential workplace hazards could be dust, could be wood or silica. We do talk about silica later on in this PowerPoint as well. Could be soot or carbon from the boilers. There's also voluntary use and required use. So a lot of people in here can voluntarily use an N95 respirator for their own use. If you want to use an N95 for your normal day-to-day job, I do have a form up here that is required for those to be filled out at one time. So if you want to use it if you want to use it now for the next couple of years, come up here, grab a form, and this just states that N95s are hard to breathe through. I'm certifying that I am healthy enough to be wearing it because if it's voluntary use, you're not required to get that medical evaluation done to ensure that you are able to wear a respirator. So if anyone is wearing a half-mask respirator for any boiler clean out or whatnot, they are getting that medical evaluation. But if it's a voluntary use N95, we're not doing that medical evaluation on you. So you need to certify yourself that you are healthy enough to be wearing it because it is hard to breathe through, especially if you've been wearing it for a couple of days for extended hours. It can fill up the fibers in that N95 pretty quickly and make it harder to breathe through. So N95 use during your work job, come up here and fill one out, please. We want to make sure that you're cleared to wear an N95 properly. Must be NIOSH approved, so N95s, NIOSH, 95% of the particles are getting filtered out. Important that it is proper N95, not the KN95 usage for voluntary use. Breathing through an N95 is hard for the body. Can be hazardous for people that have lung problems, and it needs to fit properly. So if you have a beard like myself or anyone else, N95 isn't going to be fitting to your face properly, so really you're just going to be getting particles, around the seal, and you're not going to be fully protecting yourself as if you had a clean-shaven face and good contact with the N95 seal. Cannot be repaired or cleaned if soiled or damaged. So if you are wearing N95, make sure to get a new one if it does get harder to breathe through. N95 stayed roughly between 2 to 3 days of use of normal use, depending on what atmosphere you're in. If you're in a very dusty atmosphere, that could fill up a lot more quickly as if you are just walking through hallways and doing that. Like I said, I got a voluntary use form up here. Please fill it out if you are going to be an N95 user voluntarily throughout your work shift. That's an OSHA requirement as well. So we do have air purifying respirators for maintenance staff and leads that do any sort of cleaning in the boilers, as well as any sort of pool staff. So the cartridges is key for what you have. So we're going to have purple, which is going to be particulate for dust and debris. That's common. But we also have black filters for any sort of ammonia, organic vapors for the chlorine gas. Respirator use, you want to make sure to be cleaning, inspecting your respirator every time you're using it, making sure that you are storing it properly in a sealed bag. I got another slide on that. Everyone here knows how to properly put on their respirator. We do that every year during our annual fit test. Do your seal checks before use every time as well. Make sure to maintain it, clean it, repair it with proper materials. Cleaning it and making sure that it does dry before you put it away, or if you are doing that, make sure that it is in a breathable bag. Storing it away from damage, contamination, sunlight. And a sealable bag as best as possible and away from those conditions. So we'll talk about hearing protection as well. This is the last PPE section that we have. So noise is a big key throughout everyone's job. It could be at home as well. If you're listening to loud noise in your headphones, earbuds, whatever it is, that can be very hazardous to your health. As well as if you're in the boiler room for an extended period of time when those boilers are running, that can be very hazardous for your hearing as well. Always be cautious of that. We'll be doing our noise assessments in the fall when staff are back in the building. OSHA does allow 85 decibels for 8 hours, and that's actually quite a bit of noise. You'd be surprised at what the levels are in a room if you think it's loud. So you can download a NIOSH app on your phone. It's the NIOSH sound level meter app, and it's pretty accurate. It can't be calibrated like a normal device would, so you can't be used as an actual OSHA approved device. But just to get a good estimate of what the noise is in that area, you can download that app, pull it out, and it will fluctuate based off of what's going on in the room. But if it's just a standard noise with like a boiler running, it can give you a pretty good idea of what the level is in that room wherever you are usually being stood at for that duration of time. So, but they also do have a short term, so you cannot exceed 110 decibels for a 15-minute time frame as well. So we do have annual audiograms for employees that are exposed to high level of noise, such as it could be bus mechanics, maintenance. I think band and choir might be involved with it as well. It's all based off of your most recent noise survey. They'll help identify who should be involved in that annual audiogram. So if you ever have any ringing in your ears, that could be a workplace injury because of your workplace exposure. But if you go home for the night and you're shooting guns or you have other activities at home that could be high noise, that could be the cause of it as well. So that's why the audiologist will also talk with you about your activities away from the job to help identify if it is workplace related or not. So common noise exposures, so like woodworking in the wood shop. Thankfully, those machines aren't running constantly in the wood shop, but woodworking materials, if it is being exposed to wood or steel or whatever it may be in industrial tech, it does create a very high pitch. Luckily, it's short bursts usually, but But also gunshots. If you're at the range shooting or doing whatever hunting, temporarily that certain amount of time, very hazardous for your health. Wear your hearing protection if you're going to be doing that, doing target shooting or whatnot. So we do offer earmuffs, earplugs, and ear caps. The earplugs that are expandable foam are the most provide the most reduction rating. So those ones are usually around 30 decibels for reduction. But there are some other other things. You want to take away 7 decibels for improper fit. So really, those would only be around 23 decibels of effectiveness. Ear muffs are usually the least effectiveness, and those are roughly 18 to 23. But you can always double up with the earplugs, and then with the ear muffs around them, those provide the most reduction rating possible. So it's important that we identify what your noise is that you're doing the job with, and then also the PPE that you're going to be using with it to ensure that we're bringing you below that 85 decibels or whatever we need to bring you down to. We do the audiometric testing every year with MedCompass. That was done earlier this year. And then other PPE options, gloves, boots. I know you guys are offered boots, safety glasses, hard hats, FR clothing, high-vis clothing if you're in a high-traffic area, face shields if there's any splashes or potential debris coming out. Always be inspecting your PPE. It's really important, and then get new stuff if it's showing any deterioration. If you ever have any questions on PPE also, you can always look at the SDS, and it'll provide you with what they recommend you be wearing for the chemical. Then also make sure the SDS states concentrate or ready to use. A very common thing that happened this year was that a lot of our cleaning materials, came to us, as ready to use product, but staff or parents of students were sending us concentrated SDSs for the product, and which were never actually which the teachers or the students were never coming in contact with. So you want to make sure that we have the proper SDS for what the chemical is, because concentrate's going to be 100% of the product. It's not diluted yet. That's going to be a lot hazardous product as if it was diluted to 90-10. So always be cautious of what you have in your hand and if it's the proper end product for what you're using. All right, I think silica is one of the last stuff, and then I have a lot of pictures to go through on common OSHA violations and fire marshal violations, just to provide some input on what we've been seeing throughout the districts. So we do have a silica exposure in ceramics classes because I do have clay dust on the floors. So always be cautious of using brooms and whatnot to getting that airborne. If we have any HEPA vacs or other vacuums that we can use, that'd be best practice. We will be doing silica testing on the ceramics class in the fall when they get back. We're also going to be doing formaldehyde testing on biology classes when they're back in lab as well, to ensure that they're below formaldehyde levels during their dissections, because formalin is usually used on the specimen, on the preserved specimen, and that does contain formaldehyde, just to further protect us, ensure that our employees are not getting exposed to high levels. And we probably will be doing a silica sample on one of the building cleaners or custodial staff that would be cleaning that classroom as well, just to ensure that for a normal day of exposure when cleaning a ceramics classroom, that we're not exposing any sort of cleaning staff to an exposure as well that's too high. Health effects could be silicosis. This is kind of where you see your lungs fill up with the silica, and it causes a lot of deformations. It causes your body to fight the silica, which you're kind of just fighting yourself then, which can lead to COPD. You're coughing a lot, hard to breathe, kidney disease, lung cancer. OSHA does have a standard on silica as well, so we'll be testing silica to the OSHA standard and to the levels that they do provide us. Fall protection, lastly, so we do have guardrails throughout the district. You'll see that on the rooftops. That is, if we're in any spots within 6 feet of the rooftop edge, we will have a guardrail nearby, or some other device for us to tie off to that prevents us from going over the edge. in the event of a fall. If we can get a lift in a certain spot, that's beneficial as well. So fall protection is required if we're above 4 feet on unprotected sides of any sort of platform. So if we're standing on, a table that was elevated above 4 feet above the ground, technically that would be a fall hazard according to OSHA. And we would be required to have some sort of fall protection on the table. But instead of having that, maybe get a lift in here to do any sort of maintenance that's required. But that fall protection could be guardrails, a fall harness, and fall lanyard. It could be warning signs with tape and some sort of flagging systems. A lot of different things that could be there. Here's an example of fall protection with a fall harness and lanyard. So fall restraint prevents you from getting to the edge. So that means the lanyard will not be able to extend to the edge. Fall arrest is where that you have the potential to fall over the edge, and that's where you're going to be having that shock absorption on the lanyard as well. So if you do fall over the edge, that takes away a lot of the tension away, so your body doesn't feel that all that forces. You're not required to have fall protection on an extension ladder. That's not required. You just need to have a properly secured and in good condition. But now if it's fixed ladders over 24 feet, it's required now to have fall protection on those ladders. Eye wash station showers, just make sure to be doing your weekly inspections on those. Flush the materials. Fire extinguishers, be doing your monthly inspections on those. RPS does not require anyone to fight a fire, but you can in the event that you do feel confident in fighting that fire, and you understand how to use a fire extinguisher. I know 3 years ago we had the fire department in-house doing a simulated fire, so everyone was able to use a fire extinguisher there to be able to assist if there was ever a fire. Never allow a fire to get you away from the exit, so always have your back to the exit. So if you are fighting a fire and it gets too big and engulfs other flammable materials, you always have that ability to run away and get help and get out of the building. And also never fight a fire in an unknown area. If you walk in there, you might not know what's in there. It could be gasoline, could be other sort of flammables or explosives in there that you don't want to be fighting a fire with. Always get out. Get to a safe area, call 911, have them fight the fire if it's too big for you to be fighting. And remember, always fight that base of the fire, never fight the flames itself. So we have fire extinguishers throughout the building, making sure that they're always in the proper gauge, always in the green, making sure that they're always cleared out. Same thing with the electrical panels, always have those cleared out within 3 feet at least. Pull pin, aim at the base, squeeze, and then sweep it left to right. So lastly, now all we have is just pictures. So we'll have pictures on OSHA violations and then fire marshal inspection pictures that I've had throughout different districts. So, best here would be an A-frame ladder that's high enough to begin to the rooftop or to begin to the ceiling, or using a lift to get to the ceiling. Do not be standing on the top rung of a ladder. Do not have cords, near the water or in the water. Don't be using a power strip with an extension cord. Do not be storing stuff within, designated areas, such as 3 feet in front of equipment. Daisy chaining, making sure you're not doing that. If there's a machine guarding that's taken off of the drill press, make sure to tell your lead and get that locked and tagged out. So this person took off the machine guard on the table saw because they said it affected their ability to see what they were cutting. Well, maybe you should clean the guard or get a new guard because it's been faded too much. So I'm on the right-hand side. Always be cautious of the paper cutters. Needs to have that finger guard that attaches right here and here. That's commonly taken out of a lot of paper cutters, and that's also a common OSHA violation for any sort of office spaces. Making sure that we do have access to the eye washes and that they're actually being properly flushed. This is pretty corroded, so this will probably need to probably need to get replaced, as well as have the eye wash caps on there to prevent anything from getting inside of there. On the right side, make sure that we do have grates on our floors. On the left-hand side, we do have, you can't have no on there. You need to have it be properly locked and tagged out, as well as you can't keep it locked in place on the on position. You need to have the availability to be turning it off in the event of an issue. Same thing, clearance issues, 3 feet. Then also making sure that those cylinders are properly secured to the wall with the chain. So common fire marshal violations are going to be improper lighting, using extension cords and power strips, securing them to the roof, to the ceiling. That was a weird one. He didn't like it that much. Also making sure that we do have proper clearance on our fire exits. Then also making sure that we are clearing out those exits as well. So in the event of an evacuation, we have snow cleared off on the other side to allow us to open the doors. Do not store combustibles near exits, so underneath any sort of stairwells. Making sure we maintain 18 inches of clearance around fire sprinklers, and then 24 inches of clearance on ceilings that are non-sprinklered rooms. Then lastly, just a discussion, ensure PPE is in good condition. Always contact myself or Dan if you need to order more, or your lead. That's very simple to do. Always inspect. We do have a safety committee meeting that occurs every 2 months during the school year. If you want to be a part of it, feel free to let myself or Dan know. We do have a couple of custodial staff that are involved, and maintenance staff and mechanics. But it's always good to have more representation if possible. It's always good to bring up any sort of things that you're seeing or anything that you're hearing from your buildings. I do have the N95 forms up here if you want to be wearing N95 during your normal job. And then hepatitis B vaccination forms as well I do have up here. Any questions? You have anything else, Dan?
Yeah, one other thing as well. So I mentioned before that we do the Safe Schools trainings as well. There's still some other things that HR has to have us go through. So I will be sending out some emails regarding Safe Schools for our human resources side of things. So keep that in mind. It doesn't mean you have to go through all of this stuff again. It's just related to policy and some of the things that the board requires us to look at on a yearly basis. So with that, have a great summer. Let me know if you guys need anything. And yeah, we'll see you next time. We finished up a little early. What's that? New employee, yep.